was a sunny summer morning. Katie learned that if you don't put your shoes on, the dew on the grass soaks your socks. And Orbie discovered that in the center of a flower, there are things that turn your fingers yellow. And they both found out that ants just love to crawl all over peonies. The two friends were up early today because Great Uncle David was coming to stay with them. Mom and Dad had to go to a fancy lunch. While Mom was getting ready, Katie asked, what would they do all day with Great Uncle David? Mom said they'd have lots of fun, but they must remember they'd never spent a whole day with Great Uncle David. He was an older man, and that they were not to wear him out. Katie and Orbie thought and decided that a puzzle and card games would be fun and not too tiring. Orbie suggested they carry them down. Uncle David might get too tired climbing the stairs. They had just put the toys on the kitchen table when a car horn tooted. Katie and Orbie raced out the door. A taxi was driving away as Katie and Orbie ran down the steps and hugged Great Uncle David. Mom and Dad came out, all ready to go, and more hugs were hugged. Uncle David said how happy he was to stay with Katie and Orbie. He was tired of old people and wanted to have some fun. That sounded perfect to the two friends. After the second game of cards, Uncle David looked outside. He said that cards were very nice, but on such a lovely day, he just felt like doing something fun. Katie and Orbie looked at each other. Great Uncle David smiled. Maybe something fun like swinging, he said. Katie and Orbie's eyes opened wide. Did he mean swinging on swings at the park? Great Uncle David nodded. Orbie tooted anxiously, wouldn't he get tired? Uncle David laughed and said it would take more than a little swinging to tire him out. Katie giggled and Orbie spun happily. Uncle David took their hands and off they went to the park. There were lots of kids in the park, but Katie and Orbie saw 3 empty swings. Great Uncle David gave the two friends a few startup pushes. Then he got on the swing. He pushed off. The swing just flew. He went as high as Katie had ever seen anyone swing. Other kids came over to watch him. Orbie burbled proudly that he was his Great Uncle David. After a while, they left their swings and went over to the slide. When it was his turn, Uncle David laughed and hooted as he slid down the slide. Katie and Orbie squealed with laughter. Then they had a castle-building contest in the sandbox. Their creations were all wonderful, and it was a 3-way tie for first place. Suddenly, Great Uncle David said that it must be lunchtime. His tummy alarm just went off. Katie didn't understand, and Orbie carefully rubbed a pink spot while he thought about that. Uncle David said it must be a tummy alarm because he was suddenly so hungry his stomach was grumbling. The two friends laughed. Up they got and headed for home. There they all helped carry food, plates, lemonade, and glasses to the treehouse. It was a lovely picnic. Even Chance thought so. She liked Great Uncle David, too, and she sat on the floor beside him, curled up close. After lunch, Uncle David asked if anybody wanted to act out a story. Uncle David explained that it would be an instant play. He would read the story, and Katie and Orbie would act out the words. Orbie tooted with pleasure. Could he be the prince in Cinderella? And Katie jumped in. She wanted to play Jack and the Beanstalk. The two friends raced into the house for storybooks. Orbie was the princeliest prince, and Katie made a wonderful Jack. Even Chance helped out by being the cow Jack was supposed to sell. They all laughed until their sides ached. Then Uncle David asked if they knew how to play hopscotch. Orbie snorkeled. He didn't know what a hopscotch was. Uncle David pulled out a box of chalk from his pocket. You drew the game on the driveway with the chalk. Next, you found yourself a marker, and then you're ready to play. He was going to use a keychain as a marker. Anything would do. Orbie and Katie raced into the house and came out with a small beanbag and an old sink stopper on a chain. Uncle David said they were perfect markers. Next, Uncle David showed them how to play. You toss your marker into the first square, then hop on one foot in a square up the game board. Then you hop back to the square above your marker. You have to pick it up and then hop right off the hopscotch. If you make it without falling or stepping on a line, you get to go again. The tricky part is that you can't step in a square with a marker in it. Katie laughed. It sounded like a whole lot of fun. Orbie just loved to hop, so the game was on. Great Uncle David was out when he stepped on a line. It was Katie's turn. Katie hopped up and back and picked up her marker perfectly. She tossed it again, but this time she hopped on a line. It was Orbie's turn. Now, as I'm sure you know, Orbie was a terrific jumper, backflipper, spinner, and, well, you guessed it, he was a great hopper too. He was like a pink-spotted pogo stick going up the board and down again. He easily leaned over and snatched up the sink stopper and hopped off the board. Katie and Great Uncle David laughed and clapped. They played and hopped and laughed all afternoon. And when they were all hopped out, they lounged in the lawn chairs and drank some more lemonade. And that's how Mom and Dad found them when they came home. Mom said the luncheon was lovely and asked if they'd had a quiet day. Great Uncle David smiled and said they'd played at the park all morning and played hopscotch all afternoon. Dad said, I should have known. When his taxi arrived to take him home, Katie and Orbie gave Great Uncle David extra big hugs and kisses and thanked him very much for staying with them and for teaching them a new game. They asked him if he would come again soon, and he promised he would. Katie told Mom that Great Uncle David didn't want to do quiet things. He wanted to play hopscotch. Mom said that she herself needed to remember that he was still young on the inside. Everyone agreed that was the best way to be. And I hope older people you know remember to stay young on the inside, too.
Did you know? Did you know? Did you know?
Giraffes have the same number of bones in their neck as you do. Ants have no bones. And dogs like to bury bones. You can't put a bandage on a broken bone, but you can draw one on a cast.